Welcome to the Climbing the Charts podcast. I'm Angie Lawless, and I'm here with my co-host, Brandon Miller.
Today, we are honored and very excited to welcome Burke Nihill as our guest on Climbing the Charts. Burke, a former suburban Chicago kid who once dreamed of playing third base for the Cubs, earned his BA in business administration from Illinois Wesleyan University. Wasting no time after college, he immediately enrolled in law school, earning his JD with honors from the Chicago Kent College of Law in 2003. After earning his law degree, Burke did a number of things, almost all in Chicago. We understand he worked for a law firm with a focus on representing small businesses. He served as associate general counsel for OfficeMax and also led a leadership team for VMware, which is a Silicon Valley software company. But it was in 2016 that Burke landed the role as general counsel to the Tennessee Titans. We've heard it's a good story and involves LinkedIn. After a series of promotions, Burke was ultimately named president and CEO of the Titans in 2020, which is the role he currently maintains.
Yeah, so you could have gone, the OfficeMax route. You could have gone the Michael Scott route, but instead...
It was actually really funny. So The Office was hitting its peak popularity. The original run. It's become even more popular maybe since it's been streaming. But it was hilarious watching some of the overlap, working at OfficeMax at the time, which, for everything that OfficeMax sells, paper is the number one thing they sell. And so Dunder Mifflin, when they would be talking about these behemoths, that they were competing with, it was really the company I was working for. Every once in a while you'd look over and you'd see OfficeMax paper in the office. It was a fun era.
Okay, so because this is Music City, we always like to ask what you're listening to.
Oh boy. My wife and I have a bit of a tradition that when Nissan Stadium is having a concert coming up, we listen to the music of that artist and the lead up. So there's been a lot of Zach Bryan in our house recently, which is pretty good summertime music.
So do you go to most of the shows there then?
Yes. It's a big part of what we do is delivering big shows, whether they're concerts or Monster Jam. But when we're recording this
Monster
weekend,
Jam.
It's a big part of what we do, and we need to do it with excellence. So I'm almost always going to be there.
Oh, wow.
We've got tickets for the Kenny Chesney show in August. One of our good friends is the drummer, so we got to go to that one.
That's an only in Nashville thing too. To say one of my friends is the drummer right, for the concert. You don't get that in a lot of other cities.
Yeah. You really don't.
Okay, so Burke, we recently saw you at the Nashville Business Journal's Women of Influence luncheon, where Angie here was being honored as in the entrepreneur category as a woman of influence. Titans owner
Thank you.
Amy Adams Strunk, along with a couple other Titans executives, participated in a panel to discuss the importance of the female perspective in the NFL. We were really struck by, how diverse and well represented women are in the Titans C-suite. Is that normal for the NFL? And if not, what created that with the Titans?
Yeah, I don't have any data to cite in terms of, our statistics versus other NFL teams. I do think the NFL as a whole, you are seeing an increasing amount of diversity across front offices and on the football side. And that's definitely true of females working in football, whether it's in finance or human resources or PR or now, and really impressive growth rates on the football side of NFL teams. So coaching, scouting, that sort of thing. I would tell you that for the Titans in particular, we are led by someone who I think is one of the best owners in sports, who happens to be female, and her perspective, I do think, is different than a lot of other owners in 100 different ways. She takes a different approach than a lot of other owners that I see across the NFL and other places. And that includes how we go about hiring. And so we're really proud of where we are, and we'll continue to lean into better hiring practices and employee development practices. The truth of it is, we've got 13 female vice presidents. By memory, I think we would have had 2 8 or 9 years ago. Wow. when I joined the team as general counsel. And in some ways that's not by accident, because Amy promotes this approach of thinking about hiring differently and having a great workplace and employee development, that sort of thing. But in other ways, we've got 13 people who, whether through an interview process or through promotion processes, they earned the job. They're just the best person for that role. And but the net result. Look, we as a business, whether it's as a football team or a live entertainment venue, we need the perspective of people with a lot of different life experiences. And I think a big part of the change that people who would have been following us the last 10 years see, it is genuinely because of Amy and the stamp that she brings. And she's proud to say that she thinks that there's a lot of what she brings that is because of her female perspective, which differentiates our organization from a lot of other professional sports organizations.
I do think that that's important to have both at the top, because as someone who has two male partners, I think we all sort of agree that we're better together because we definitely look at the world differently. So you're in your 8th season with the Titans, 4th as president and CEO. Your first role was general counsel in 2016. I think it's safe to say that a lot of law school students right now would be thinking this is sort of the holy grail of careers. Brandon and I know from personal experience, it's not only is it tough to, I think, make your way in the sports and entertainment world, just generally, but then to break out of it and sort of cross over from that general counsel and into the business side of things. I feel like as soon as you start law school and then the first job you get, you're like, no, I want to be on the business side. Those guys are having more fun. So tell us a little bit about your path from law school to where you are.
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of people that get into law school with a specific vision in mind of what kind of law they want to do, what it means to be a lawyer, and I did not. My dad was a dentist, and he had some friends that were lawyers, but I never completely understood what they did. I was pretty darn naive looking back. I really like John Grisham novels. That sounded fun.
Same.
And then I just found that I liked the coursework. I was a business major, but thinking back to high school, I took a constitution class and really enjoyed that, and then took some business law classes and really enjoyed that. And so I was towards the tail end of my senior year of college, and I was debating whether to go to law school or to go into business. And none of the business opportunities really resonated with me all that much. And so went into law school, and I truly just had no idea what it meant to be a lawyer. Came out on the other side and was in private practice, but ended up being a good fit accidentally for me. There was it was mostly small businesses. So it was, local pizza shops or medical practices, and just getting into being a general advisor to those businesses. I really enjoyed it. Ended up, as you mentioned before, getting into a couple of different in-house roles. And I did always gravitate towards being a more general problem solver than being a lawyer. I think if you're listening, one of the it sounds sexy to be an attorney in these positions, but in reality, you're always the red tape. You're always the no person, and the business people are the yes people, and that looks way more fun. I think I've had some personal growth during that time too, because I remember really early as a lawyer kind of enjoying arguing, and at some point recognized this is really unproductive. And what's a lot more fun is finding ways to get the problem solved, and to redefine it, to find ways to compromise. And so I definitely started being different than some of the lawyers that I went to law school with, who seemed to enjoy the arguing and gravitated towards business side type work. And the Titans, in particular, I think all professional sports are probably very similar. We're not as big as you would think. Really high visibility organization, but there is when you come in as a lawyer, you really get to kind of work on everything, and you end up meeting a lot of people throughout the organization, from finance and human resources and marketing, but also the trainers, the general manager, the coaches, and you're helping out across this organization. And pretty soon, I did find myself, if it was truly legal work, as general counsel, I usually found somebody else to dig into that contract or redline that contract.
That does seem like the beauty of general counsel.
Yeah.
It really is a broad tent role where you're kind of figuring out what the problems are and then finding someone else who can write the 400-page research memo.
Generally, like an outside firm, you're like, oh, you can do this.
That's right. That's right. So it was by the time our CEO retired, I didn't really feel qualified to get the phone call I got from Amy, but in many ways, I had exposure that was unique to a lot of others in the business because of that role as lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
You just got exposed to every part of the business and had a general understanding of how all these pieces fit together.
Yeah.
And I've read that you kind of found out about your sort of opportunity with the Titans from an email that came across your desk. Is that true? It seems like a really cool story.
It's close. I mean, look, it is funny. There's a lot of people that I work with. There's a lot of people that are in high school today that set out from a very young age wanting to work in sports. And you mentioned it before too. It's absolutely true. I was just completely sold on being third baseman for the Cubs. I mean, I always loved sports. I wanted to be in sports, but I did not, as a high schooler, as a college kid, even remotely think about the idea of working in sports. So once third base wasn't an option, I didn't figure I would be in sports at all.
Did you play in college?
No, I dabbled with basketball at a Division III school. Really unimpressive athletic career to be working in sports.
Okay. It's more impressive than most of us.
But while some people actually set out to do that, and they're looking at majors that focus on sports business related sorts of things. That certainly wasn't my story. And what I have found is there's 1,000 different paths into sports. It's a really, they're rare opportunities. And I think all of us who have one are really grateful to have found one. But my story is one of those really unusual ones because I was just pretty happy working in these in-house roles. I was at this technology company. It was really exciting work and would thought that it probably didn't get much better as a lawyer. And I ended up getting a general counsel advertisement in my LinkedIn feed in 2016 for the Titans. And I clicked on it because that's an unusual thing to get in your feed. And I mentioned it to my family. We were living in the suburbs of Chicago and everyone was supportive of my applying and did. And to my shock, kept getting phone calls. And eventually by that summer, we were moving down to Nashville.
Oh,
It's incredible. So tell us a little bit about, your current role. What does your day-to-day look like? How do your duties differ from, say, the ownership group, the general manager, and the coaches? And in other words, who made the decision to dump AJ Brown?
Oh boy. It wasn't me. I think every organization is set up a little bit differently. In our organization, there's a pretty clear differentiation between what we refer to as the football side and the business side. Amy obviously crosses over both. I consider myself someone who's going to be helping Amy in anything that she needs help on. And sometimes that does relate to the football side, but much more, I'm going to wake up in the morning thinking about the business side. And so that means in many ways, what I do every day and what my colleagues do every day is not that dissimilar from people who are leading a factory or a bank or a hospital. There are finance issues. There's human resources issues. There's marketing things that we're working on. We're trying to build a great culture, right? We're trying to make this a great place to work, even if the business card didn't have a really cool logo on it. There would be a temptation to set up an organization like ours and say, you know what, you should be grateful to be here. It's a rare opportunity, like we just said. And we want this to be a great place to work, regardless of whether it was something that wasn't quite as exciting to be working for. And that's, I think as it ends up, there's a lot of human beings that work where we work, just like every other place. And so it's to have everybody waking up in the morning feeling inspired, connected, feeling like they're getting enough communication about what it is that the vision looks like and how they fit into it. That's just a never-ending conversation about how to continue to do that better. So that's a lot of what we do on that side is just typical business challenges, and ours are not unique to our particular team. And then, of course, we're thinking about things like building a new stadium, and that is a bit unique to our business. And it's something that there's something that's going to come up every day, whether it's just monitoring the progress of construction, what's next, making sure that there's great processes to get local folks involved in the opportunities that are coming with this stadium, workforce development, that sort of thing. It just requires constant pressure from a lot of us to make sure that not only we're holding each other accountable, but all the vendors downstream accountable to be sure we're just doing an awesome job for this city on that project. And then, of course, there are things that come across over onto the football side, which is really fun. There's no denying the fact that when our widget is football games, that's a really fun thing to be paying attention to, and making sure that they've got all the resources they need, that we're clearing hurdles for them, and that they're ready to prepare and get out there and win some football games and eventually a Super Bowl.
So how many people are you responsible for right now?
We have about 275 people at this point. To give you a sense of where this organization has gone under Amy's leadership, we would have been less than 150 people when Amy took over the team in 2015. Wow. And there's no question that we were behind in a lot of areas. But we've not only caught up, but in many cases
almost.
There's really neat opportunities available here. And Amy's definitely ready to invest in those things. And it's been really neat to think about, the job she's created, and just the impact that she's had on our organization, and then how that's gone, beyond our organization to the greater city.
And so where do those people sit?
Great question. At this point, we've got 3 different places that people are working every day. So we have our practice facility in Metro Center. All of the football staff is going to be there. That's where the player locker room for practices sits, and we've got the bubble if people are driving by and can see that out in the distance. And a good chunk of our business staff is there too. That's where Amy's office is. That's where my office is, and a lot of those other functions that I just mentioned. We also have our stadium, and there's a staff that is waking up in the morning thinking, just completely about how to make that facility, the current one and the future one, just operate with excellence. That we're getting the right events coming through there. That those events are getting the attention that they need to want to come back and bring their events here in the future. It is a remarkable challenge. It's kind of like an iceberg, where what people see above the surface, you have no idea the work that team has to put in. And then more recently, now we have a third facility called Titan's House, which is a stadium experience center. It's a really, really neat space. And there's a lot of rationale behind it. But maybe one of the primary ones is there is such a paradigm shift between the current stadium and what the new facility will be. And so this Titan's House allows, by just walking through, you can start to feel and sense the difference and sense that paradigm shift. So we've got a whole team over there that wakes up every morning, goes to Titan's House and hosts people over there.
Yeah. I was going to say, this podcast is hosted in East Nashville. So a lot of our guests and, me every morning drive down Shelby, and anybody who hasn't done that lately, you will see I don't know what you call it, the rollout of the signage. Groundbreaking has happened on the new Titan Stadium. So does that mean the design is 100% dialed in? Because you do see a lot of bulldozers out there, things are moving, and
I think it's hard to ever say it's 100% locked in, but it's 99 point something percent. Certainly the bones of the building are locked in.
Right.
So there is a hole that, as we're doing the show, is 75% excavated at this point. I think I heard a stat that there's 23,000 truckloads of dirt that have not all of them have made it off the property, but many of them have. And the building's going to start going vertical very, very soon. Actually, there were a few pylons and columns that went in just 2 or 3 days ago. Oh, wow. And they're just kind of sitting there loosely now. But once those actually get anchored in, then they'll be able to start getting vertical. There was a time-lapse video that our construction manager put together for us. And by the look of it, if you pause it at about the first game of this Titan season, you will actually see a very clear shape of a new building by that first game. So it's going to really start to cook with oil here soon.
Oh my gosh, that's so exciting.
So this podcast kind of grew out of a book that we did about Nashville called Climbing the Charts, The Ascent of Nashville. And we have a whole chapter kind of about the history of sports here, professional sports. We recount the story about how Phil Bredesen, at the time was mayor of Nashville. He kind of said basically he had never watched an NFL game, certainly knew nothing about football, and gave a talk to a bunch of business leaders saying that we needed to bring a professional football team to the city, if Nashville sought to move to the front ranks of American cities. Many Nashvilleians at the time thought Nashville was too small, wasn't ready. There's a lot of SEC fans here that kind of maybe, had bandwidth constraints on how much enthusiasm they had for supporting something else. I think, time has told us that the opposition was wrong. From your perspective and knowing the history and the origin story of the Titans, why are the Titans so important to Nashville and its future?
I think it is. It's such a multifaceted answer. Let's fast forward to the new stadium. And one of the things that people talk about quite a bit is that this new stadium with a roof is now going to open up opportunities for Super Bowls and Final Fours and that sort of thing. I think to think about a Nashville that was considering whether to pursue an NFL team, the idea that a Super Bowl would be hosted here, the idea that a Final Four would be hosted here, it's just a mind-blowing shift.
Especially when the first team was practicing Vanderbilt, Memphis, all over.
Yeah, they had a headquarters in Bellevue and practiced there, and then they went and drove down to Memphis for all of their home games, and eventually stayed at Vanderbilt for a year, and then eventually to the new stadium. I think everyone is right to be super excited about those mega events and what that means. I mean, there's economic impact figures that I could quote you, but there's no question that there's a ripple effect that benefits everyone in the city when those sorts of things come through, and it's a real international promotion of this city. And
will you actually talk about that a little bit? But we just had Bob Mendez in here. And, one of, his arguments, as you know all too well, I'm sure was, we're giving up 50% of the sales tax for the next 30 years. And if you're not somebody who benefits from the East Bank or you're not down there, you might not like the fact that maybe you're subsidizing that, sales tax, but you're talking about the ripple effects that kind of everybody sees. So from that standpoint, kind of how did you address that?
Yeah, look, I think to get back to the why behind pursuing a new stadium, that's not at all where the team even started off. There was just where the current stadium sat in terms of its condition and the work that needed to go into the new stadium, just to get it to be sustainable. It was going to be a big investment, and there was this lease that was entirely common for the time that it was executed that put a lot of that responsibility on the taxpayers of Nashville. And so that was just completely unacceptable to us and to the sports authority and to others. And so we started off just open-minded, there's got to be a better way forward. And it obviously got a lot of attention there towards the end, but I will always be proud of the 3 or 4 years of conversations that ultimately led to what we completely believe is a win-win-win across the board. Because really what has happened is there was another close to 20 years left on our lease when we started these conversations. And really early on, you start hearing Oracle is potentially looking at one end of the East Bank and putting 8,000 jobs there. And the idea that we would have about 100 acres of parking lots that was just going to stay parking lots for that period of time. The taxpayers were fractional owners of those parking lots. And the idea that we could use that as potentially part of the solution to get to that better way forward was a conversation across city, state, neighbors, community leaders, and really, really proud of that outcome.
And I know Mayor Cooper was a big fan of saying that, we're going to free up all of this land by doing this deal.
We did it like a sort of an exit interview with Mayor Cooper, and he talks, if anybody hasn't listened to it, it's a great interview. He talks a lot about, he thinks, 20, 30 years from now, his masterpiece will be the Titan Stadium deal, because of, not even just because of the stadium, but because of what it enables in terms of the saving side, and then also the redevelopment path. We've got 500 plus acres on the East Bank that currently have 0 people living on them.
0 people living on them. And to the point about Nashvillians as a whole, this is just a remarkably rare opportunity for a city. We've been really honored to have a seat at the table. This is not going to be our development, but we've been a part of these conversations. And when we've heard from neighbors about what they would like to see the city do on this property, just about everything that they talk about, you're seeing as part of the plans. So there's going to be acres and acres of green space. There's going to be an engaged riverfront that, look, Nashville has one of the most ignored waterfronts of a major city in the world, and this is an opportunity to actually engage that riverfront. These are all things that the entire city can enjoy, and on top of that, looking long term, the city has taken back this land, and the there was a bit of a fist fight from developers on the opportunity to help develop that land, which ultimately the taxpayers will benefit from. In the commercial success of that land, it is opening up tax streams that don't otherwise exist as we sit here today. And there's a bunch of vacant parking lots over at Nissan Stadium. So there's absolutely no question, as somebody who was a part of the process from the jump, when people really, really, really dug in to where we were at that point and what was possible. Honestly, the stadium was like the 4th or 5th bullet point of why we should think about doing this. There was so much more to benefit the city, both from a cultural perspective and from a financial perspective of jumping into this opportunity.
Mm-hmm. So I guess if I'm in Bellevue, I don't come downtown, I don't care anything about the Titans. I guess the thinking would maybe be, you're giving up some revenue here, but look at all this other revenue that you're creating that we think will more than outweigh what we're giving up and will ultimately help you, because the city will be.
Yeah, there are things related to this campus in particular, the 100 acres that the city owns, but then there's a ripple effect beyond that. There are developments that are just waiting to go based on what would happen in that space. Nothing related to their taxes are affecting any sort of development or stadium project. So there's definitely a revenue benefit to all of this. But I think the cultural side of this too, it may be that person in Bellevue isn't going downtown at this point because there's not anything that is attractive to them. I believe that this is going to be a part of the city that is going to be a magnet for people around the city to come and use it. You've probably heard TPAC is in conversations about moving to that area.
Sounds like it's going to happen.
I hope so, and I think it will.
A lot of money to be raised.
This becomes kind of a new town center, right? It's just a complete paradigm shift, and I think the more people actually start to see it and see it come to life, I think it's going to be the sort of thing that somebody in Bellevue or Antioch or North Nashville are going to see, that this is a place for them to come and bring their families and enjoy. Eventually, it's my understanding, you'd have to ask Mayor O'Connell, but I think that there is a transportation hub that is still an anchor part of this development too. So it will be easy to get to that area where it's maybe not as easy today. Yep. So I think
that would be a game changer, I think, for a lot of people, right? Because it is, as you know, it's hard to get from anywhere to downtown and then find somewhere to park. And then, as somebody who went to a Taylor Swift show, getting out of there took, 2 hours or something like that. So just changing some of those, how we get around in the city dynamics is, I think is critical.
Well, and I think they talked about, we had Michael Briggs on from the mayor's office talking about, kind of the multimodal transportation that will be enabled in the initial development area of the East Bank as well. So more than just, again, the Titans, but just getting around. And with 45% of the units that are going up being affordable units, I think it's just a really exciting thought.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, the more you actually, listen and learn, transportation itself ends up being an affordable housing tool, because
100%.
To now have potentially this line that goes through and a transportation hub, there's 8,000 jobs at Oracle. Those become more attainable for people if it's easier for them to get there. And it's there may be affordable housing in different parts of the city, and if they don't have transportation to get to that job's not accessible to them. So I don't talk about it as often as I used to, because the approval process closed out last year. But I am genuinely just full of passion for this project. And if I wasn't a part of the Titans, I would be advocating for this having been the right outcome, and from the rooftops, because this is going from something that was a building that was needed a lot of attention, like over $1 billion of attention and 100 acres of asphalt parking lots, and what is going to come to life for this city, and the puzzle pieces that are going to fit into place because of this project. There are going to be people 20, 30 years from now that are just going to be looking around saying, how did this city have the foresight to bring all these pieces together? And it's because the city took back this blank canvas and is able to do the things that the city wants to be done in a central part of the city. And oh, by the way, there's a stadium on the backside of it that's gonna be able to host some of the biggest events in the world.
Yeah. And give our listeners a sense of the scale. Like I remember when the first estimate about the renovation cost of Titan Stadium came out. I didn't follow all of it, but I remember the first number was around 600 million. Mm-hmm. And I think the original stadium was a little bit under 300 million to build. So we're talking double the cost of the entire stadium just to try to kind of patch it. And obviously it was a concrete stadium, which it's got a lot of maintenance issues, but I think the big piece is that, that 100 acres that we're going to be activating, and how it does.
Another kind of, what's it built out of now?
Steel.
Okay.
And Turner's our GC for this project.
TBA. Turner is a part of the group, Tennessee Builders Alliance, but there's two national contractors and two local contractors that are coming together to build a stadium and doing a great job doing it.
So explain why it's for people who say, yeah, but it's smaller. Why do we choose to go smaller?
It was a very, very careful process. I think you're going to see a lot more of this as new stadiums and arenas come online. There was old thinking that was just about getting as many seats into a building as possible, and the new thinking is that this is about having as many great experiences as possible, and not necessarily as many seats. I mean, the phrase nosebleed seats is not one that's used to describe a positive experience at a building.
The first Titans game I ever went to, we used to work at Bassbury and Sims, and one of the partners gave me some tickets, and he's like, "You may need to hire a Sherpa to get to these, but it's going to be fun." And that's a good, I think, anecdote to kind of hit on that idea. There was some really high up seats in the current Titan Stadium.
Yeah, and I mean, still are today. It's the way that we looked at it, it was let's build as many amazing experiences as we can build into a building and then stop. And so 60,000 with some standing room only ended up being that number. We now have a model that is to scale at Titan's House. It is remarkably impressive. I think it was somebody who really got passionate about building Star Wars models or something like that in high school and found a way to do that as a career. It is, you can just see every little detail of the stadium. And to look at it in that form, it is, you can look at the seat that in theory is the furthest away from the field in the corner and realize just how much closer it is to the action today. The way that we have constructed this building, that area, it's the terrace level. So if you've seen the building and that giant terrace that's the size of a Best Buy outside of the upper level of the stadium, that is the terrace for those seats. So we're just incredibly proud of the work that went into delivering premium experiences for those who want premium experiences, but for everyone coming through the building, having something that is just a game changer. And people, this may be what you were getting at. So people ask the question all the time, doesn't that disqualify you from a Super Bowl? And the reality is the NFL, with all of their crazy scientists and strategists, have been actually asking teams to think about this for a long time, believing that if you listen to fans, this is what they want, is they want to have just only good experiences and venues that are right sized for that. And so the NFL's been with us in this journey the entire time. I can't break news because there's no news to break, but they have been interested in bringing their biggest and best events, including the Super Bowl, to Nashville when the time is right for it. And so there's no limitation on anything that we could bring to this building with that capacity, but the people who come are just going to have an incredible experience.
And so what about, does that price out people who could only get the nosebleed seats before, but still wanted to be part of it?
We are absolutely committed to that not being true. So we've gone on sale with PSLs, and our lowest PSL is going to be $750, which I know is still a meaningful amount of money, but compared to other new venues, compared to our current venue, $750 is a price point that I think surprises a lot of people. We have been committed from the beginning to have this building be the people's house. And there's a lot of indications of that. One of them is we've got a 12,000 square foot community center built into the stadium itself that will be activating for not-for-profits, for job fairs, for field trips, that sort of thing. We certainly are looking to do as many different diverse events within that building as possible, so that people who aren't football fans can come and enjoy this building as their house. But it also includes Titans games, making sure that there are price points that are more attainable than I think a lot of other buildings and ones that surprise people.
Describe first, for people who haven't, kind of studied the sketches, describe sort of what it actually will feel like and for people who haven't been to Titan's house, to walk in and just be part of it.
Sure. So, I mean, if today's stadium is, it's one that we're proud of. We've invested in and made it a comfortable experience, and we'll continue to do that for the next 3 years. But there is an element of it being relatively basic. This new stadium will be much more dynamic and high in character. So there have been a lot of new buildings built in the NFL over the last 10 years, and most of them, every one of them is right for what they were trying to do in their particular market and for their particular team. We did not take a whole lot of inspiration, though, out of these buildings that have a very kind of tech forward spaceship look to it, recognizing a couple of things. One, the centrality of this location. This is not something like a lot of other stadiums where people are pulling off in the suburbs somewhere, yeah, into a parking lot. This is in the center of the city, and so it needs to respect that central location. We also just don't think Nashville is that type of city where that type of design would resonate as much as something that is high in character, that's something that has a soul and is unique to the city. We took a lot of inspiration from a couple different buildings. One is the Ryman, which may be surprising, but the idea that the Ryman 100 years later is still probably the most treasured music venue in the city. And it's not because it's feature rich. It's because of its touches. It's because of its soul. And so if we're building a building today that should be one of the treasures of this city for the next 100 years, what would that feel like? And it certainly shouldn't be fake old, like the Ryman, but what if we put in that level of effort in the design and in the beauty and in the character of it? The other one is from my home state, and that's Wrigley Field. Mm-hmm. And the reason why I say Wrigley Field is for two reasons. One, Wrigley fits into a neighborhood really well. If anybody's been there, if you take Wrigley Field out of Wrigleyville just doesn't make sense. And if you took Wrigley Field and just dropped it anywhere else, Wrigley Field doesn't make as much sense. The building and the neighborhood just fit together so completely perfectly that you kind of don't know which one came first, right? And that's the goal of this stadium and eventually this neighborhood. Wrigley Field had a major renovation over the last 5 or 6 years. And one of the challenges was, how do you maintain the character of this building, the soul of this building, while you continue to bring it into modern standards? This building is going to be beautiful that opens up in 2027, but 40, 50 years from now, there's going to need to be work that continues to keep it relevant for a modern fan. And we want to issue this challenge for our successors years and years down the road, that they're going to have to live into the soul and character that has been created today. So as much as any, there's modern elements to the experience that are completely different than what you'd expect from our stadium. I mean, basic things like almost twice the number of bathrooms, despite the fact that there's less capacity. That's something that we want people to be able to get back to their seats more quickly. We have frictionless markets, so that people aren't waiting belly up to concession stands and losing half a quarter waiting for the barbecue nachos. They can go and get in. We've got average transaction times we're forecasting of 35 seconds. If you know what you're going to get, you can get in and out and back to your seat quickly. Yeah. So there will be a lot of these modern, maybe unexpected experiential touches too. But at its core, I think that's the difference that I think people will see is that character and that soul.
Yeah. But it does seem like Geodis has done a lot of these. So I think of, just having built a modern stadium, I think Geodis has done a really good job too of having, you don't have to wait in line for an hour. There's no bad seat. It's a really compact stadium. And I think that's hopefully a blueprint for, sort of how to do this.
Yeah, we did. We took some inspiration from Geodis for sure. It's they did a really good job with that venue. And I think that venue is also authentically Nashville. And so no question about it. We took some notes on the things that worked really well there and brought some of those things over to the new stadium.
And we hear that there's a live stage in the actual seating bowl.
There is. That was a big debate for a long time, because you don't want to take out more seats than you need to. But we just believed that a stage inside the seating bowl, kind of around the people, is where there's going to be the most energy for a stage. And this is Music City. So that's something that we definitely want. That stage ends up about the size of the Ryman stage, to give you a sense of scale. It is just in the lower bowl in the middle of the action. So as someone comes on to play a halftime show, or perhaps just in between a timeout, there's going to be a sense of energy around that stage, as opposed to something that's tucked off away from the action. We feel like that's going to there's more to music than just the sound itself, right? There's a whole experience behind it. And we feel like for an NFL venue, there's a sense of scale. It's hard to make it intimate and get that experience, but we think we've pulled it off.
Yeah. And it seems like it will be helpful for revenue if I'm always thinking, ooh, who am I going to see right there?
One thing we thought was really interesting too is when we were talking to Bob Mendez, he said, obviously we had, the mayor's office, candidate O'Connell and Mendez, they had some opposition to some of the financing pieces of the stadium. But they're like, once it's done, he's like, we really do share, he's like, unlike some things that have happened in the past, this has been voted on. We have an agreement. We're never going to retread that. And now that it's a go, we're going to embrace this. We're going to lean into it with everything we have. And they were very complimentary of especially your vision for, kind of a neighborhood zone around the stadium and how that's going to complement and, hopefully energize the redevelopment of the East Bank and the IDA.
Yeah. The initial development area. Though we did ask Mendez, if you guys were in the ring together, who do you think would win?
He seems very strong. Like I would put money on Bob Mendez for sure.
Well, what he said was he's got a lot of big guys on his side.
Well, you didn't add that qualifier.
No. But then he's like, and I've got Isaac Adai and Freddie, the mayor. And he's like, so I don't know about that. And then he got to, maybe I could bring in the police department. So we were really amping up here.
Not to take this too far and get cheesy, but I think we walk out of that ring friends. There were conversations that happened publicly. I can tell you, and I don't think it's betraying any sort of confidences. At every point, we're having coffee with then candidate O'Connell, was having then council member Mendez. over to my office and other places. And we had incredibly cordial conversations. And I think people would be surprised at how cordial those conversations were. And
He's a Chicago guy too.
he is. He is. We bonded over some of that. 100%.
You drew a line though at the Bears Titans clash.
We never brought it up.
We asked him why he hated the Titans so much.
Well, I can absolutely tell you that from behind the scenes, that it has absolutely been from the time that candidate O'Connell became Mayor O'Connell and Bob Mendes joined his staff, we've been absolutely really lockstep bringing this vision to life. I mean, it was part of what we dreamed of doing from a project perspective, was to craft something where everyone was aligned. Our neighbors were aligned, the state was aligned, the city was aligned, the team was aligned. And we believe that that alignment is absolutely there. So now that they're in the role of the city and working with developers, working with other potential residents of the East Bank, we're absolutely partners in bringing this to Nashville in an incredibly special way that generations will appreciate. Really, really appreciate the partnership.
Yeah, he echoed the same sentiment. And for the record, he does not hate the Titans. He loves the Titans, but we did ask.
Okay, so we recently attended the first annual Rebuilding Together Nashville community breakfast. So I was on the board for that. I was the board president for a couple of years at the Northwest Family YMCA in Bordeaux. Our lead sponsor for the event was the Titans Foundation, and Jahari Matthews, who, as you know, serves as the vice president, executive director of One Community and the Titans Foundation, served as our keynote speaker. So gave a really great talk. So just tell us a little bit about what One Community is and the Titans Foundation. Are they separate things, part of the same thing? And, sort of what is their mission and vision for the future?
Yeah. So if you go back 4 or 5 years, there were a lot of things where the Titans were in startup mode. And one of the things that came up at some point was recognizing the potential power of our platform and how, if we put the same amount of strategy behind what we do in this community, we could probably make a more meaningful, measurable, sustainable impact. And One Community is what came out of those conversations. We had some ideas on our own, but there's a real limit to how you can impact your community if you've got some executives sitting in a conference room guessing at that. And so we set out over a period of years to have conversations with our neighbors, with community leaders, and asking just a couple questions. One was, what are the opportunities in this city? What are the challenges in this city? And then where do you see an NFL team potentially being able to have the most impact at that intersection? And we heard a lot of the same things in a lot of different parts of the community. A lot of the things really were, I would argue, probably illogical for an NFL team to step into the gap. But we just are a bit audacious in believing that we can make a difference and potentially serve as a model for other businesses and organizations in this community to figure out where their intersection is. So One Community ended up being a program initially 16 partners. We're continuing to grow those partners. Some of those partners we've worked with for a long time, like Metro Nashville Public Schools, Tennessee State University, and others are new partners. And some of them are programs that are, a real specific focus that, we're going to be able to knock out, over the next couple of years. And some of them are longer term focuses. One stands for opportunities, neighborhoods, and education. Those were the 3 themes we just kept coming to over and over again. Opportunities, it's that Nashville's growing. There's great things happening in Nashville, but not everyone is participating. They don't have the opportunity to participate. And so how can we potentially, help with that? Neighborhoods, it's that there is this focus on a lot of the growth that's happening in the downtown area, and yet Nashville's happening in the neighborhoods. So how can we use our platform to ultimately promote the neighborhoods, to serve the neighborhoods? And so we've got some programs around that. And then education may be the most natural fit for a team like ours to be able to enhance an education of a Metro Nashville public school child in Tennessee State. We've got a long-term relationship with them and looked for ways to take it to the next level. We've got some really, really interesting programs within that I think are just, I honestly believe that when I ultimately step aside from the Titans, or I'm asked to step aside, whichever comes first, I think there's a really good chance that I will feel the most pride out of some of the stories that come out of One Community. We have, just to give you one example of a program, we had conversations in that opportunity realm about, there's conversation about it, but like how do you act? How do you actually start to move the needle in that respect? And we worked with a few different organizations to set up a fund where there will be loans provided to local businesses, mostly diverse businesses, that they're ready, right? The business plan is the right business plan. The business owner is the right business owner, but they lack the collateral to justify a loan without being able to get the bank in some regulatory problems. And so the Titans are putting $2 million into an account that's managed by Citizens Bank. And there's the Nashville Incubation Center has come along, Corner to Corner has come along, and loans will be given to businesses that are just trying to get off the ground or maybe go from point C to point D, and those dollars will be at risk. So we are providing the collateral to allow those loans that wouldn't otherwise be able to happen so those businesses can participate in the opportunities. And when I think about it, to me, that has the potential to have an impact that's so far greater than what I just described. Like the stories that I believe will come out of that one program, because not only might it affect that business and the household that that business supports, there may be additional jobs that come out of the businesses that are growing within that area. And it starts to create an ecosystem that just took the intent, that just took kind of staying in the fight and asking follow-up questions. What I love even more than that is that when we started talking to TBA about some of these programs, TBA put another $1 million into that program. So it's a way that I just feel like as a team, this is something that we've tapped into. There's another tier that we can get to in terms of using our platform to represent what's good about Nashville. And if we can be representing the art of the possible as opportunities and challenges continue to come to this city, what if every business and every organization looked at it this way? And instead of just listening to the concern and, just being really blunt about this, looking for political candidates who, might care about those issues, that's great. But what if they acted with urgency of actually doing something about it or finding others to do things about it with them? And anyway, again, a bit of a passion project, as you can probably tell, but that's one of 16, 17 programs and growing where I just believe that this organization is going to make a lasting impact on this city.
Well, I mean, I think about what you just said, and we just interviewed Mo Moore with Slim and Huskies. And so I think about them. We talked about how, accessing capital is often, if you don't have anybody in your lineage to help direct you and you don't have the support, but you've got lots of great ideas, accessing capital and figuring out how you can just get off the ground, that's the biggest impediment. And then you take these guys who go into, this historically Black neighborhood, but now it's attracted other businesses to it, which has now made this beautiful historic area of Nashville a go-see place. So to your point, the way that it shapes the entire city, down to the jobs, down to just, that's actually impacted nationally because of their...
I think, for any of your listeners who aren't familiar with the history of Jefferson Street, both the vibrant history of Jefferson Street from decades ago, and then the real twist that has literally divided the street and affected the neighborhoods that are around Jefferson Street. People should look into it. It's a story that people in Nashville should be aware of. And when you see opportunities to invest, I know for the Titans, we're gonna do that. There was a tornado just before COVID. I mean, people who live here remember that in 2020.
March 2020.
Right. And
far too well from where we sit right now.
March 2nd, 2020. Yeah.
It was obviously just an incredibly tragic time for the city. Our office in Metro Center is maybe 5 minutes away from one of the most impacted neighborhoods by that tornado. And we pulled up several buses, worked with some partners who, had some supplies that would be helpful to that effort. And we sent an all call, and it wasn't just our business staff, it was our football staff, it was our players, went and loaded up buses and were just meeting our neighbors at an incredible time of need. My wife and I spent a lot of time in a kitchen helping to clear out spoiled food because electricity had been cut. And I think we've come to recognize that for whatever reason, sports matters to people, and our logo, our players matter to people in this city. And when we can show up, when we can invest, it matters. And so we try really, really hard to pay attention to that privilege and to honor it.
Nashville's really a special place, and I think it is unique in the country. And so I think that it's extra important for, the Titans to blend in and to support these extra efforts. And so it's really awesome to hear everything that you guys are doing. Brendan, do you want to do the lightning round questions and finish up?
We're very intentional to not ask questions for you to make predictions about the season upcoming.
We did
Thank
have we did have a request to ask about the secondary.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, how strong the secondary is going to be.
Look, our new defensive coordinator is a secondary coach by trade, a former secondary player. We've had a really good offseason in terms of free agency in the secondary. I will make no predictions about the team to your point, but it's been fun to watch our scouting staff and our coaching staff come together and have a really good off season of building the team for this season. And then you got to roll the ball out there and see what happens.
Okay, so this is our lightning round. These are kind of quick questions. Name of a book that every person should read.
I recommend Good to Great to our staff. And what I will say is it's like the first third to half of the book, and then it gets a little wonky for everyone. But there's just a lot of really good lessons from a business perspective about leadership and teamwork and that sort of thing.
Built to Last I think is also really great.
That's a great.
Same author. How many hours each week are you at Titan Stadium?
At Titan Stadium.
And I guess maybe it depends on how many events are going on there.
That's right. It's probably, it's somewhere between 1 or 2 hours or 10 hours, depending on what's happening at the stadium time.
How many hours are you at all of the Titans
that's
facilities?
different. Yeah, boy, I haven't quantified in a while, but I think, the typical day starts somewhere between 7 and 8. And I actually really do try hard to lead with some work-life balance, recognizing that if I'm staying till 7:30, then other people, regardless of what I say, may think that that's important for them too. And
so you go home to email, read articles.
I even try not to do that as much as I can. I mean, so my daughter's a sophomore at Auburn, and then I've got boys who are a senior in 8th grade, and I love the heck out of my wife. So I try to get home to them and pay attention to them, be present with them, which is increasingly hard, but it's something that I really do try.
Biggest perk of your job, or the thing that you like the most about it?
Man, it is such an honor. It really is. Let me answer the question a little bit differently. This is not lightning round speed. I'm sorry, but I've got a brick. It's a brick from the old Chicago Stadium. My dad won the brick at an auction, and Chicago Stadium was where Michael Jordan played, and a lot of Bulls and Blackhawks players before that. And I remember what I felt when he gave it to me. Just like I could not believe that I had a brick from Chicago Stadium where Michael Jordan had played. Like Michael Jordan hadn't touched that brick. It wasn't like he played on that brick or anything. I remember how I felt. And so I've got it in my office as a reminder of not taking any of this for granted. It is just such a remarkable opportunity to work in this context and still try to have a bit of a childlike wonder about everything that we get to experience.
I think the biggest perk might be for your kids.
No kidding. And then my wife and I really do try to keep them realizing the same thing, that none of it's normal, that they get to come out to training camp and, high five the players and that sort of thing. And they're doing a pretty good job of staying grounded, but they definitely get opportunities that they wouldn't have if I was an attorney at VMware.
Or OfficeMax.
At OfficeMax, right. Although, they have to pay for their paper.
Yeah, trade-off. Yeah. Something tells me that they'll be okay with that. And I guess, do you have to wear blue every day?
No, I don't. There's a bit of an occupational hazard, though, where there's a really good chance that if you wear Titans gear, which a lot of people do every day, you're going to be matching with somebody, right? And so, if you wear something that's a little out there Titans, and you may end up sitting in a meeting next to somebody wearing the same out there Titans thing. Yeah, it's a unique thing to our business.
Well, that's kind of cool. It's like it's a team meeting.
It is.
So who should we do this with next? Community leader, anybody that comes to mind?
I think you should do it with Jahari Matthews. If you want some outside Titans folks, Dina Ivey would be a terrific interview. I mean, everyone knows Butch Spears, and I think Dina is exactly the right person for this job at this moment in time and has some really great ideas about how the NCVC can be supporting Nashville as a whole. I'm a big fan of Winston Justice from Alliance Bernstein. Really interesting journey and doing some really cool things at Alliance Bernstein now. This city is just so loaded full of really interesting, talented people.
So what is the best way for our listeners to learn more about the stadium or what the Titans are doing as a community or just to be part of it?
Yeah, I mean, we obviously have a website, TennesseeTitans.com. We have several really good social media follows, both for the team itself. We have some that focus on one community and the Titans Foundation. There's a new NissanStadium.com that has a lot of information about the new stadium and opportunities to sign up to come in and take a look at Titans House. But if you get to TennesseeTitans.com, you'll be able to find your way to a lot of different things about the Titans.
Where is Titans House?
Titans House is in Germantown.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Burke. We really appreciate it. And thanks everybody for listening to another episode of Climbing the Charts.
Thanks for having me.